They say winter hides things. Beneath a fresh layer of snow, every crack, every stain, every scar on the world disappears. Riverbrook, Pennsylvania, looked almost innocent that night. Streets lined with soft powder glowed beneath street lamps, and chimneys painted lazy trails of smoke into the sky. If you just glanced, you might think this town was pure, untouched. But you'd be wrong. And Dwayne Johnson knew better than most, because he'd lived the truth beneath that snow. At 53, Dwayne looked like a man carved from hardship. He moved with the silent precision of someone trained to stay alive, not to be seen. His breath fogged in the air, each exhale like a whispered ghost from a past life. Broad-shouldered, wrapped in a faded military jacket stitched with a tattered American flag patch, he walked the empty sidewalks as if measuring every step. His boots were cracked, soles worn thin. His pants were frayed at the cuffs, but none of that mattered. Not the cold, not the hunger. Dwayne carried himself with something the people of Riverbrook had long forgotten how to see. Dignity to anyone, else he looked like a statistic. Just another homeless black man wandering aimlessly. But if they'd stopped to look closer, really look, they might have noticed the subtle signs, the squared shoulders, the constant scan of every doorway. And alley, the quiet ritual he repeated under his breath like a prayer. Check the exits, identify the threats, maintain situational awareness. They were mantras from a life lived in war zones, not diners and gas stations. But this country had a funny way of treating its soldiers. Some came home to parades. Others came back and vanished, invisible in the land they'd bled for. On that particular night, Dwayne had only one mission: dinner. The monthly VA check had cleared. Not much, barely enough to scrape by, but tonight it meant he could afford a hot meal. A real one, not a sandwich fished from a trash bin. Not a soup kitchen's charity portion. No. Tonight he was going to sit down like a man and eat like one. That's what brought him to the Red Rail Diner. Its neon sign buzzed faintly in the snow. Open 24 hours, it promised through the frost-covered glass. Inside, the smell of grease and coffee drifted into the cold like an invitation. Dwayne paused before the door. He brushed snow off his jacket, straightened his spine, and rolled, his shoulders back. It had been 3 days since he'd been inside a building, and the idea of warmth, of normalcy, felt almost foreign. But he needed it. Not just the food, the moment, the dignity. He opened the door. The jingle of the bell overhead might as well have been a gunshot. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Coffee cups hovered mid-air. Faces turned, eyes narrowed. A mother pulled her child close. A retired-looking man slid his wallet deeper into his coat pocket. Dwayne knew the drill. He'd seen it too many times in too many towns. But tonight, he didn't flinch. He scanned the room once. Door, kitchen, exits, angles. Then he moved to the counter and took the stool that gave him a clean sightline of everything. Strategic. Intentional, trained. Just passing through, he murmured, not looking at anyone. Just looking for a hot meal. Behind the counter, a young woman, early 20s, tired eyes but a steady hand, watched him for a beat longer than most. Rachel Miller. She'd worked here nearly 2 years. Most nights were predictable, regulars, truckers, grumpy locals. But this man, something. About the way he sat, the calm, the way he didn't slouch or shrink. There was history there, maybe pain, maybe both. But definitely something more than met the eye. She forced a polite smile and slid a menu across the counter. "Can I get you something, sir?" "Coffee. Black. And whatever the special is tonight. If it's not too much trouble, ma'am." Not honey, not sweetheart, just ma'am. Simple respect. Rachel noticed that. She poured his coffee and offered the night's special. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans. Dwayne nodded. "That sounds perfect. Thank you." In the corner booth, 2 uniformed men shifted. Officers Barnes and Kyle. They came in every Tuesday night. Barnes, the older, colder one, raised an eyebrow at Rachel, then nodded toward Dwayne. Kyle smirked. Rachel's stomach tightened. Dumpster diving doesn't count as dining out. Huh? Kyle said, just loud enough for everyone to hear. Barnes chuckled darkly. Better count the silverware, Rachel. Rachel said nothing. Years in customer service had taught her to smile through shame, to swallow disgust. But tonight, her fingers trembled slightly as she took Dwayne's order to the kitchen. Dwayne said nothing either, just sipped his coffee, but his eyes tightened. At the corners, check the exits, identify the threats, maintain situational awareness. The game had begun. And the two officers? They had no idea what kind of player they were messing with, because the man they just insulted wasn't some random drifter. He was Dwayne Johnson, 3 tours, Silver Star, 2 Purple Hearts, and they had just stepped on the wrong battlefield. And if you're still here, if you've made it this far, good, because this is where it gets real. This is the beginning of a story not just about one man's fight, but about what happens when an entire system forgets its promises, and one soldier decides to remind them. So stay close, you won't want to miss what comes next. The plate slid. In front of him, steaming with mashed potatoes and gravy, a slice of meatloaf neatly centered beside green beans, and a soft roll. Dwayne gave a quiet nod of appreciation. It wasn't just food, it was a moment of normalcy, a ritual he hadn't been granted in weeks. He wrapped his hands around the warmth of his mug again, eyes steady, words minimal. Been a while since I had a home-cooked meal, he murmured to Rachel, his voice calm, but edged with something heavier. Rachel didn't know what it was. Exactly, dignity maybe, or sorrow worn thin with time. Then, like a switch flipping, the corner booth stirred. Officer Kyle stood, stretching like a lion waking from a nap, already smiling, the kind of smile that made Rachel's stomach drop. He sauntered toward the counter, slow and deliberate, his partner Barnes shadowing him like a blade. Kyle pulled up the stool next to Dwayne, leaned on the counter with mock familiarity. Hey, Rachel, he said too casually. How's that? Brother of yours? Still top of the class at the academy. Rachel's jaw clenched. He's doing fine. Good man, Kyle nodded. We need good officers. Ones who know what it takes to keep the streets clean. You know what I mean, right? He didn't look at Rachel. He looked at Dwayne. It's about keeping the wrong people out of the picture. Barnes slid into the seat on Dwayne's other side, effectively boxing him in. Yeah, he chimed in. A lot of these guys say they're veterans, but combat? Most never saw it. They know how to game the system, though. Right, Kyle? Kyle leaned in. Real soldiers come home, get jobs, contribute. Not like this. He tilted his chin toward Dwayne. This is just the act. The beard, the dog tags, all of it. Rachel returned with a napkin and ketchup, trying to steer attention away from the boiling tension. Can I get you two anything else? We're good, Kyle replied. He picked up a sugar packet from the dispenser and, with a smirk, tossed it directly onto Dwayne's plate. Here you go, buddy. Earn your keep. Dance for your dinner. Isn't that how it works for you people? It was too much. The entire diner held its breath. You could hear forks stop midair, feel the discomfort tighten like a noose. Dwayne didn't react the way they expected. He didn't rise or shout or curse. He picked up the sugar packet gently, turned toward the officers, and placed it back on their table with quiet grace. Then he looked Kyle dead in the eye. I earned my dignity in Kandahar, he said, voice like slow thunder. And I don't need to earn it again from you. Something in that sentence, something raw and immovable, sent a crack through the air. Kyle's face turned a deep, ugly red. Barnes's hand drifted to his hip near his holster. You threatening an officer, vagrant? He asked. No, sir, Dwayne said coolly, turning back to his food. Just having dinner. But Kyle stood. Up. The metal legs of his stool screamed against the tile. I think you need to leave. Dwayne didn't move. "I've paid for my meal," he said, slow and measured, "and I intend to eat it." "This man is refusing a lawful order," Barnes added, rising now too. Rachel's voice cut through. "Officers, please. He's not causing any trouble." Barnes snapped toward her. "Stay out of this, Rachel. You don't want trouble too. Your brother wouldn't appreciate his big sister interfering in police business, would he?" That landed hard. Rachel's face drained of color. But her hand, hidden inside her apron pocket, was already recording. Kyle's hand came down hard on Dwayne's shoulder. "On your feet." Dwayne stayed seated, his eyes locked with Kyle's again. Calm, steady. "I have the right to finish. The meal I paid for. I've broken no laws." Barnes began listing off accusations like bullets. Disturbing the peace, refusing to comply, threatening behavior. Phones came out. Customers had started recording, quietly, carefully. No one intervened, but no one looked away either. Dwayne's jaw was set. 3 tours, Afghanistan, Silver Star, 2 Purple Hearts, and I can't eat dinner in the country I served? Kyle yanked at Dwayne's arm. The stool scraped. The silence in the diner turned thick, unbearable. That's when Dwayne looked at Rachel, directly, deliberately. "If something happens to me," he said, voice rising just enough to carry, "call General Whitaker, Pentagon. Tell him Dwayne Johnson is in trouble." Rachel blinked. Was this real? Was this man delusional? But there was no tremor in his voice, no desperation, just quiet resolve. Barnes laughed as they dragged Dwayne to the door. "Yeah, and I've got the president on speed dial." The front door swung open with a gust of cold wind. Rachel followed them, breath clouding in the air. Outside, in the empty parking lot, Kyle slammed Dwayne against the patrol car. Barnes patted him down hard. A chain snagged, something clattered to the ground, his dog tags. Kyle stepped on them, smiled. "Oops," he said, then shoved Dwayne into the back seat and slammed the door. Rachel stood frozen. The taillights of the cruiser disappeared into the snow. Wind howled through the street. For a moment, she did nothing. Then she moved. She ran to the snowbank, dug frantically with her bare hands. The metal tags were cold in her palm. She brushed away the ice and read the embossed name, Johnson, Dwayne J. Opos, Methodist. Her phone buzzed silently in her apron pocket. Still recording. She ducked into the diner's bathroom, hands trembling, pulled out her phone. Stared at the screen. The Pentagon's number glared back at her. This was insane. Calling the Pentagon over a man she barely knew, over a hunch, over a feeling, but the look in his eyes, the way he didn't fight back, the weight of the dog tags in her hand. It all screamed truth. She tapped the number. 3 rings. "This is the Department of Defense. How may I direct your call?" Rachel took a breath that felt like jumping off a cliff. "I need to speak with General Whitaker," she said. "It's about Dwayne Johnson. He's in trouble." And in that moment, unknown to Rachel, unknown to Riverbrook, the entire world was about to change. Inside the cramped employee bathroom of the Red Rail Diner, Rachel Miller stood frozen, staring at her phone like it was a live grenade. Her thumb hovered over the screen. She could still hang up, still pretend this never happened. She could tell herself she imagined the fear in Dwayne Johnson's voice, that maybe he was just another guy lost in the shuffle, clinging to stories, to feel important. But she didn't hang up. Because somewhere in the depths of her gut, past the fear and the doubt, she knew he was telling the truth. So, when the voice on the other end said, "Department of Defense, how may I direct your call?" Rachel responded with all the courage she could muster. "I need to speak with General Whitaker, please. It's about Dwayne Johnson. He's in trouble." A pause, then, "One moment, ma'am." Her heart pounded. She fully expected to be brushed off or dumped into voicemail purgatory. Instead, the call transferred once, twice, then again. Each clicked like a countdown to something bigger than she could fathom. Then came a new voice. Male, controlled, sharp as glass. This is Colonel Reynolds, aide to General Whitaker. Who am I speaking with? Rachel's voice shook, but she pushed through. Rachel Miller, I'm calling from Riverbrook, Pennsylvania. A man named Dwayne Johnson told me to contact General Whitaker if something happened to him. He was just arrested by 2 local officers. I think they're going to hurt him, maybe worse. Another pause, but this one was different, heavier. She heard muffled voices in the background. Something shifting. Then, please hold for General Whitaker. Rachel nearly dropped the phone. Thousands of miles away in Washington, D.C., in a stately office lined with military awards and oak-paneled walls, retired General Harold Whitaker had been reviewing briefing materials for an upcoming Senate hearing when his phone rang. The name Dwayne Johnson stopped him cold. The years melted away. He was no longer a polished statesman with silver hair and command over national security. Logistics. He was back in Afghanistan, pinned under the flaming wreckage of a Humvee, dust thick in the air, bullets snapping overhead. And the man who saved him, Dwayne Johnson, no man left behind. That had been the promise. Now that man was in trouble. Put her through, Whitaker ordered. Rachel's voice filled his ear, anxious, unsure, but clear. She told him everything. What happened at the diner, the arrests, the threats, and through it all, Whitaker's face tightened, not with confusion or doubt, but with purpose. Miss Miller, he said when she finished, you did exactly the right thing. My aide will send you a secure number. I need you to text that video recording to it immediately. Then go home. Stay there. Do not talk to anyone else about this. Until I say otherwise. Understood? Yes, sir, Rachel whispered. But what about Dwayne? Will he be okay? Whitaker's voice softened, but only slightly. Sergeant Johnson is one of the finest soldiers I've ever known, and I take care of my own, always. The call ended, but in D.C., everything had already shifted into motion. Whitaker moved like a man possessed. He reached for his secure line, dialed a number from memory. Authorization Sierra Echo 94 Alpha, he said. Immediate. Intervention request. Riverbrook Police Department, Pennsylvania. One of our decorated combat veterans is being held under false pretenses. Another call, this time to the Department of Justice. Then another, to the Secretary of Defense's office, and another still, to the current head of Veterans Affairs. Every time the message was the same. It's about Dwayne Johnson. Every time the reaction was instant. That name still meant something, and the system that had failed him before was now activating at full throttle to protect him. Back in Riverbrook, in a concrete holding cell barely bigger than a janitor's closet, Dwayne sat on the cold bench with his eyes closed, breathing slow and even. His ribs ached from where Barnes had accidentally elbowed him on the way in. But the pain wasn't new. The silence wasn't either. He'd been here before, in different uniforms, under different flags, but always in rooms just like this. He'd learned long ago that sometimes silence was the only armor left. So he leaned into it. He didn't open his eyes when the door down the hall slammed open, didn't flinch when fast, purposeful footsteps echoed closer. Only when his cell door swung open with a metallic clang did he look up. 2 figures stood in front of him. Man and woman, dark suits, serious faces, both held up badges. Mr. Johnson, the woman said, voice steady. You're free to go. He studied them, took his time, then stood. That was faster than usual, he said. Special Agent Daniels. Department of Defense Internal Affairs, the man introduced. This is Special Agent Morales. We're here at the direct request of General Harold Whitaker. Dwayne allowed himself the faintest flicker of a smile. The old man came through. Yes, sir, Morales said. He did. They led him down the hall past the booking desk where Barnes was in a heated argument with the sheriff. You can't just walk in here waving federal badges. Barnes stopped mid-sentence as he saw Dwayne walking free. Agent Daniels turned sharply. Officers Barnes and Kyle, the Department of Defense will be launching a full investigation into your conduct. In the meantime, I suggest you brush up on the constitutional rights of American citizens, housed or unhoused." The sheriff, suddenly pale, nodded furiously. "This incident does not reflect our department's values, agents. These officers will be placed on immediate administrative leave, pending review." Kyle stared at Dwayne like he wanted to spit. Barnes just looked sick. As they passed, Dwayne paused. He didn't shout, didn't gloat. He just said, low and calm, "Truth doesn't need a badge to stand." Outside, the snow had stopped. The world glowed under the soft haze of streetlights. The agents offered Dwayne a ride, but he shook his head. "I prefer to walk." Across the street, bundled tight in a thin jacket, Rachel waited. When she saw him, her shoulders dropped with visible relief. She rushed across the icy street, nearly slipping. "You're okay," she breathed. "I was so scared." Dwayne nodded. "You made the call." "It wasn't a question." Rachel pulled something from her pocket, his dog tags. "I didn't think it would work," she admitted, handing them to him. "Calling the Pentagon. It sounded insane." He took the tags, the metal cold against his skin as he slipped them back around his neck. "Familiar, right? It always works," he said quietly. "Truth scares cowards, and General Whitaker keeps his promises." Rachel looked up at him, bewildered. "Who are you?" she asked. "How does a general at the Pentagon know your name?" Dwayne looked past her toward the stars now peeking through the clouds. His voice was soft. "That's a long story," he said, "and not one for tonight." In Washington, D.C., inside a high-ceilinged office overlooking the Potomac River, General Harold Whitaker stood motionless, his phone still in his hand. Outside, the city moved with its usual indifference. Cars hummed, monuments gleamed under soft lighting. But inside this room, time had stopped. On his desk lay a black-and-white photo, faded at the edges, framed in understated silver. It showed a younger Whitaker standing next to a soldier with a 1,000-yard stare, both dust-covered, both battle-worn but alive. The soldier in the photo? Dwayne Johnson, the man Rachel Miller had just saved. Whitaker picked up the photo slowly, as if touching it might summon the past. In his mind, he was no longer in D.C. He was back in Kandahar, 2003, breathing through the acrid sting of burning metal and scorched rubber. Their convoy had rolled straight into an ambush. 2 RPGs. One took out the front Humvee, the other the rear. They were boxed in. Gunfire erupted from rooftops. Whitaker, then a colonel, had been thrown sideways when the blast hit his vehicle. His leg was pinned, burning. He gave the order that day no soldier ever wanted to give. "Leave me. Get out. Save yourselves." But one man didn't leave. "No man left behind," Dwayne had said, blood dripping from his temple, his uniform torn, eyes locked on Whitaker like a promise etched in steel. While bullets rained down, Dwayne had coordinated a counterattack, crawling through rubble and fire to pull Whitaker free. Not just him, but 3 other wounded soldiers too. When the Blackhawks finally arrived, they found Dwayne holding the perimeter with one arm in a makeshift sling and a busted radio strapped to his chest, still trying to call in coordinates manually. That kind of loyalty, that kind of bravery. It rewrote the way a man like Whitaker saw the world. So when Rachel Miller's voice spoke his name across a phone line 2 decades later, it wasn't just another alert. It was a debt coming due. And Harold Whitaker didn't let debts like that go unpaid. He grabbed his secure phone, his voice like gravel and thunder. "This is General Whitaker. Authorization code Sierra Echo 904 Alpha. I need an immediate intervention at Riverbrook Police Department. Suspected rights violations." The subject is Sergeant Dwayne Johnson. His next call went to the Secretary of Defense, then to the Justice Department, then to the head of Veterans Affairs, and every time he repeated the same sentence. "It's about Dwayne Johnson." Those words carried weight. Still, by the time he hung up, his office was buzzing. Aides-de-camps were printing transcripts. Staffers were coordinating transport. Outside his window, the city looked unchanged. but inside those marble buildings, wheels were turning. Back in Riverbrook, Dwayne walked alongside Rachel under a velvet black sky speckled with stars. The air was sharp, but it didn't bite like it had earlier. Maybe it was the adrenaline wearing off. Maybe it was the weight lifting piece by piece. Dwayne's coat hung loose again over his shoulders, his silhouette calm and steady, as if nothing had happened. Except everything had. Rachel still couldn't believe what she'd just seen. The agents. The way those cops turned pale when they saw them. The way Barnes and Kyle, once the kings of the diner, had withered under the spotlight. "Who is he?" she'd asked. And now, Dwayne looked at her, his eyes soft but unreadable. "That's a long story," he said, "and not one for tonight." Rachel wasn't sure whether to press him. She wanted answers, but something told her he wasn't hiding. He was choosing his moment, and that made her trust him more. She dug into her bag and pulled out a wrapped bundle. "Your dinner," she said. "You didn't get to finish it." Dwayne's brow lifted slightly. A flicker of gratitude warmed his face as he accepted the package. "Kindness is rare these days," he said. "Remember that." And with that, he turned and walked into the snowy dark, his steps deliberate, fading into the quiet. Back in D.C., General Whitaker was on his final call of the night. He rarely used this line anymore, reserved it for matters that weren't classified, but personal. This one was both. "Ava," he said when the other side picked up. "It's Uncle Harry," a woman's voice responded, bright with familiarity. "Uncle Harry? You know it's not even my birthday, right?" "I need a favor," he said. "A big one." Her tone shifted. "Name it." Whitaker didn't hesitate. "His name's Dwayne Johnson. He's in trouble, and I need someone with your skills to pull him out." Ava Washington, civil rights. Attorney and rising star in police misconduct litigation, sat straighter in her chair, even though no one could see it. She had built her career on impossible cases, brutal truths, and taking on systems designed to silence people like Dwayne. But this wasn't just another call. This was from Whitaker. This was family. "What kind of trouble?" she asked. "The kind that smells like cover-ups, abuse of power, and a local police force that thinks they're above the Constitution," Whitaker replied. "And they messed with the wrong man." A pause. Then, "I'll pack a bag. Sending a car. Be there in an hour." When the call ended, Whitaker let his hand rest on the frame photo one more time. Dust, smoke, fire. A man refusing to leave him behind. "Hang in there, Sergeant," he murmured. "The cavalry's on the way." Morning sun cut through the mist like a blade as a sleek black sedan pulled into the cracked asphalt lot behind the Pine Grove shelter. To most, it looked like nothing. A faded brick box with barred windows and a flickering porch light. But to those with nowhere else to go, it was one of the few safe spaces left in Riverbrook. And on this particular morning it became ground zero for something far bigger than anyone inside it could possibly imagine. Ava Washington stepped out of the back seat, heels clicking sharply against the ice-patched pavement. At 34, she was already one of the most feared civil rights attorneys on the East Coast, a name whispered in courtroom halls and police precincts with a mix of awe and annoyance. The daughter of a judge, the goddaughter of General Harold Whitaker, and the kind of woman who didn't just walk into rooms, she took command of them. Today, Riverbrook was that room. Inside the shelter, the morning smelled of stale coffee, cheap soap, and weary resignation. Dwayne Johnson sat in a corner booth, nursing a styrofoam cup, eyes steady but distant. He had slept maybe an hour on a mattress thinner than his coat, in a room full of coughing, snoring strangers, but his mind had stayed sharp, too sharp. He couldn't stop scanning, thinking, preparing, just like old times, just like war. He saw Ava the moment she entered. She didn't wear her credentials, didn't announce herself, but the way she carried herself made her presence impossible to ignore. Confident, controlled, sharp eyes behind square-rimmed glasses. Dwayne didn't need an introduction. This was the lawyer Whitaker sent, and that meant something. "Mr. Johnson," she said, offering her hand. He stood slowly. His movements still held military precision, even if time had worn down the edges. "You must be Ava." General Whitaker speaks. "Highly of you," she said. Dwayne gave a half smile. He always was a sentimental old man. Ava gestured toward the empty chair. "Mind if I sit? Be my guest," he said, sliding the salt shaker out of her way. She opened her briefcase and set a thin folder on the table. "I've read your file. I've seen the footage. What happened to you at that diner? That's not just misconduct. That's a civil rights violation. Possibly multiple." Dwayne shrugged. "Wasn't the first time. Won't be the last." "That's where." "You're wrong," Ava said firmly. "Because now you've got people who actually give a damn, and more importantly, receipts." He raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that?" She tapped the folder. "Rachel's video was just the beginning. I've started digging." "Officer, Barnes and Kyle, they've got a history. Use of force complaints swept under the rug. And not just them, this entire department has a stink I can smell from D.C. Dwayne sipped his coffee, but his eyes stayed locked on hers. "Why do you care? You could be arguing in federal courtrooms, racking up wins for headlines. Why come to this backwater town for a man who's already been written off?" Ava didn't blink. "Because that man saved my godfather's life. Because I've built my career defending people like you, and because if we don't fight this here, now it spreads. Like rot." He studied her for a beat longer, then gave the smallest nod. "What do you need from me?" "For starters," Ava said, flipping open the folder, "your full story, no edits. Then I need to meet the waitress, Rachel, and anyone else who might be willing to talk. This isn't just about you anymore, Dwayne. It's about a system, a pattern, and I intend to tear it open." An hour later, in the quiet back booth of a coffee shop 2 towns over, Rachel Miller sat nervously across from Ava, hands wrapped tightly around her phone. Her voice trembled, but she didn't back down. "I have the full video from that night," she said, "and I went back the next morning, downloaded the security footage. My friend Mark works the tech systems at the diner. He owed me a favor." Ava's eyebrows lifted slightly. "That was smart thinking," Rachel shrugged. "I kept thinking, what if I hadn't made the call? What would have happened to him? In that cell? And my brother's at the police academy, Jameson. He wanted to protect people. I believed that's what cops were supposed to do. I never thought—" She trailed off, twisting a paper napkin in her hands. Dwayne leaned forward, slightly. "Most of them do want that, but it only takes a few power-hungry ones to poison the well, and when the system protects them, they get bolder," Ava finished. "More violent, more organized." She turned her attention back to Rachel's phone. "Can you airdrop that video to me?" Rachel nodded. Her hands still trembled, but her jaw had set. Determined now, back in her motel room, Ava spent the afternoon combing through every second of footage, every blurred face, every muffled insult. She took notes, compared timestamps, cross-checked badge numbers with internal complaints. By nightfall, her desk looked like a war room. She was starting to see the shape of it, a structure, a strategy, something far more coordinated than petty harassment. Barnes and Kyle weren't just rogue bullies, they were following a playbook, and someone higher up had written it. The motel room had become a fortress of files and flickering screens. Ava's laptop bathed the space in cold light, casting long shadows over printouts, handwritten notes, and 2 cell phones charging silently by the wall. Outside, Riverbrook slept under a layer of quiet denial, but inside that room, the truth was wide awake, and it was angry. Hours had passed since Rachel handed over the videos. Ava hadn't slept. Her eyes scanned emails, police reports, news clippings, and complaints so redacted they might as well have been blank. But even the silence of bureaucracy leaves fingerprints. Barnes and Kyle weren't anomalies. They were symptoms, And the deeper Ava dug, the more the rot revealed itself. A cluster of use-of-force complaints had been filed over the last 3 years, mostly from homeless individuals, mostly dismissed. In some cases, the complainants had vanished days later. No forwarding address, no follow-up, nothing. In particular, a man named Lloyd Jenkins filed a complaint against Officer Kyle for excessive force last year. 2 days later, he withdrew it, claimed it had been a misunderstanding. A week after that, he disappeared. They made him vanish, Dwayne said quietly, standing in the doorway, arms folded, still in his faded army jacket. Ava looked up. You think they... I've been on these streets 2 years, he said. I've seen it before. Guys speak up, push back, ask too many questions. Then poof, they're gone. They say they moved, got help, but they leave everything behind. Medication, shelter beds, ID cards. People don't walk away from survival. Not like that. Ava leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. You think it's just Kyle and Barnes? Dwayne shook his head. No, they're the boots. Somebody else is lacing them up. The next morning, Ava pushed harder. She requested disciplinary records, denied, asked for full complaint logs, delayed. So she visited the district attorney's office in person. A modest building with too much glass and not enough courage. Inside, a nervous-looking assistant DA named Alan Parker met her with a strained smile. I'm sorry, Miss Washington, but without proper authorization from local law enforcement, I can't review or release those internal documents. Ava's voice was calm, but steel-threaded. That's incorrect. As a civil rights attorney investigating credible allegations of systemic abuse, I have every right to file a preliminary complaint with your office, whether or not the local PD approves. Parker's eyes darted to the door. Look, I know how this works, but here, things are different. There are pressures, people you don't cross. Are you being threatened? Ava asked, her voice low. He sat back sharply. This meeting is over. Outside, snow had begun to fall again. Light at first, almost gentle, but Ava could feel the storm behind it. Something was brewing, something mean. That night, Rachel burst into the motel room, her coat still dusted with snow, cheeks flushed. My brother, she gasped. Jameson, he called me. He wants to talk to you. Dwayne and Ava exchanged a look. Why now? Ava asked. Rachel pulled out her phone. He said he knows things, about Barnes, about Kyle, about something bigger, and he's scared. 30 minutes later, Jameson Miller sat in Ava's room, still in his police academy cadet uniform. His eyes were rimmed red. His jaw twitched. 3 years ago, he began, not waiting for a prompt, Barnes beat a homeless man to death outside the Maple Street convenience store. Said the guy attacked him. But the store owner's statement didn't match the official. Report. How do you know this? Ava asked, already recording with Jameson's consent. Jameson looked away. Captain Brick, he uses stories like that during off-the-books training. Says it's the real-world education. How to control the narrative. How to protect the department. I was in one of those sessions. They showed body cam footage that never made it into evidence. And the man's name, Ava pressed? David West, Jameson replied. The report says death by misadventure, but I heard Barnes at a barbecue last summer. He laughed, said it was taking out the trash. Silence settled in the room like smoke, heavy, suffocating. The next morning, Rachel was fired from the diner. The reason? Excessive absences. The truth? Her name had been leaked online. The video of Dwayne had gone viral, millions of views, and with it, Rachel had become a target. Her inbox filled with threats, her apartment window shattered by a brick wrapped in a note. Cop haters get what they deserve. They're making an example of you, Dwayne said calmly as he boarded the broken glass with a piece of plywood. That means you've got them scared. Rachel wiped away a tear, furious and shaking. I recorded what happened. I didn't lie. I didn't exaggerate. And now they're trying to erase me for it. They always hit the truth first. Dwayne said, because the truth is the only thing they can't manipulate. But when that doesn't work, they panic. Later that night, Ava returned to her motel to find her door ajar. Inside, everything was torn apart. Her laptop, gone. Her notes, scattered. It was no random break-in. It was a warning. They're escalating, she told Dwayne, her voice tight. This isn't just intimidation anymore. They're trying to silence us for good. Dwayne didn't flinch. He simply looked out the window into the falling snow. Then we stop playing defense. Ava turned toward him. What do you mean? I mean, he said slowly, I need to make a call. To someone who knows how to handle operations like this. Someone who specializes in unconventional warfare. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a weathered notebook. From its back cover, he tore out a page with a number scribbled in faded ink. Then he left the room and walked to the gas station down the street, where a dusty payphone still stood. He dropped in a coin, dialed. The line clicked. Q's Tech Haven. We fix what others can't. How can I help? Dwayne's voice didn't waver. The eagle needs new talons. A beat of silence. Then, Turner, Dwayne freaking Johnson, that really you? It's me, Q, he said, and I need your help. The payphone's cold metal pressed against Dwayne's ear as he waited. The line crackled, then a familiar voice came through, laced with surprise and a hint of amusement. Well, I'll be damned. The eagle calls. It's been a long time, Dwayne. Too long, Q. I need your help. It's serious. There was a pause, then Q's tone shifted to one of concern. Tell me everything. Dwayne briefed him on the situation in Riverbrook. The wrongful arrest, the corrupt officers, the threats against Rachel, and the deeper conspiracy they were uncovering. This isn't just about me, Dwayne said. It's about the system that's protecting these guys. I can't take it down alone. Q didn't hesitate. Say no more. I'll assemble the team. We'll be there by morning. True to his word, by dawn, a convoy of unmarked vehicles rolled into Riverbrook. Out stepped a diverse group of individuals, each carrying the weight of past missions and the resolve to fight injustice. First was Maya Hawk Hernandez, a former Air Force pilot with a sharp eye and sharper instincts. Then came Marcus Tank Thompson, a towering figure whose strength was matched only by his loyalty. Next was Lena Shadow Kim, a cyber intelligence expert whose skills had once saved the team from a digital ambush. Finally, there was Q himself, the mastermind behind their operations, always 3 steps ahead. They convened in a secluded cabin on the outskirts of town, away from prying eyes. Maps, documents, and photos were spread across a large table as they strategized. This town's rotten to the core, Q said, pointing to connections between the police department, local businesses, and political figures. But every system has its weak points, Maya chimed in. We need to gather concrete evidence, something undeniable. Lena nodded, already typing away on her laptop. I'm in their systems. Give me a few hours and I'll have everything we need. As the team worked, Rachel arrived, her face a mix of relief and determination. I can't thank you all enough, she said, but I want to help. Dwayne smiled. You're already helping. Your courage started this. With the plan in motion, the team prepared for the next phase, exposing the corruption to the world. They knew the risks, but their bond, forged in the crucible of past battles, gave them strength. As night fell, the cabin buzzed with activity. Surveillance equipment was set up, disguises were prepared, and contingency plans were laid out. Dwayne looked around at his assembled team, pride swelling in his chest. Let's bring the truth to light. In a dimly lit motel room turned command center, the hum of laptops and steady beeping from surveillance gear echoed like a war drum. Lena Shadow Kim sat cross-legged on the carpet, surrounded by a nest of wires, encrypted drives, and a laptop whose screen pulsed with cascading code. She wasn't just in the system. She owned it. Every ping from her monitor revealed more. Corruption buried beneath layers of bureaucratic mud. Q rolled over in his wheelchair, a tablet in hand and 2 phones buzzing at his side. The encryption on Riverbrook's internal server was pathetic, he muttered. I've seen better. Firewalls on middle school websites. Dwayne stood by the window, arms crossed, his silhouette outlined by the cold morning light filtering through tattered blinds. He wasn't a hacker or a lawyer. He was a soldier, and soldiers knew the value of intelligence. What Lena and Q were, pulling out of the digital ether could be more devastating than a tank division if used right. Tell me what you've found, Ava said, entering with Rachel at her side. Her coat was dusted with fresh snow, her eyes fierce with purpose. Lena spun her laptop around. Money, lots of it. Falcon Corps has been quietly funneling payments to multiple officers in Riverbrook PD, including Barnes, Kyle, and Captain Brick. Monthly transfers. Lean on the surface, but traceable if you know where to look. Rachel leaned closer, her face tightening. So it's not just abuse, it's business. Exactly, Q nodded. Falcon Corps has been acquiring property all over this region, through dummy corporations. But here's the kicker, they specifically target areas where the homeless population has been cleared. Cleared? Ava asked sharply. Lena nodded. That's the word they use in internal emails. Clear zones, they call them. The more reports of public nuisance, the faster they get a zoning variance. The more complaints filed by the same officers, the easier it is to revitalize the area and drive up real estate value. Rachel's voice trembled. They're getting bonuses for removing people like Dwayne from their streets. And it's not just here, Q added. I cross-referenced some of their clear zones with HUD data. This pattern repeats in 4 other towns, all with Shieldman-linked officers on payroll. Ava sat down slowly, absorbing the weight of it. This is a Ryko case waiting to happen. Dwayne's voice cut through the room, and it starts here. As they began organizing the evidence, Q passed encrypted phones to every team member. New comms, he said, untraceable. From now on, we only talk through these. Trace. Hamilton, the team's former military police officer and counterintelligence expert, pulled out a whiteboard and began mapping the network. Names, transfers, shell companies. Each line drawn connected another piece of the puzzle. Barnes and Kyle were the muscle, she explained, but Captain Brick was the brains, or at least the local middleman. Every single payout routes through a company owned by his cousin, and he's been assigning officers based on zone risk. In other words, who's willing to use force to make people disappear? Rachel glanced at Dwayne, then at the whiteboard. So what's the play? Ava answered. We go public, but not with everything. Not yet. First we release a story, just enough to spark interest. The diner video, the dog tags, the Pentagon call. Then we follow up with the evidence trail. And the interviews, Rachel added. The veterans, their stories, their faces. Q nodded. Make it personal. Make it impossible to ignore. For the next 2 days they worked non-stop. Rachel began filming Dwayne's testimony, weaving it with the diner footage and heartfelt interviews from homeless veterans who had been pushed out, beaten, or arrested under dubious charges. She edited with surgical precision, juxtaposing valor with violence, uniformed service with systemic abuse. Meanwhile, Trace secured statements from several former officers who'd quietly left Riverbrook's force. Ghost Wilson, their intelligence analyst, uncovered internal training videos where Brick encouraged aggressive policing against undesirables. Ava, armed with documents, confronted the assistant DA again, this time with a hidden mic. You want to protect your career, she said coldly. Then stop protecting monsters. I'm offering you the chance to stand on the right side of history. One way or another, this is coming out. And if your name's on the cover-up, you go down with it. The man cracked. That night, Q uploaded Rachel's finished video. They called it The Veteran They Tried to Erase. Within hours, it had over 2 million views. National accounts picked it up. Activist influencers reposted it. Veterans groups issued public support. News vans showed up outside the Riverbrook Police Department. Kyle and Barnes were suddenly placed on indefinite administrative leave. Captain Brick called an emergency meeting. Rachel, watching from her laptop, whispered, "We rattled the nest." Dwayne's face didn't move. "Then it's time to smoke them out." The sun had barely risen over Riverbrook when the first signs of retaliation emerged. The local newspaper's front page bore a headline that read, "Outsiders stir trouble, Riverbrook's reputation at stake." Beneath it, a photo of Dwayne Johnson, Ava Washington, and Rachel Miller was prominently displayed, casting them as agitators rather than heroes. Dwayne sat at the kitchen table of their makeshift headquarters, the newspaper clenched in his hands. "They're painting us as the villains," he muttered, the weight of the town's backlash evident in his voice. Ava, sipping her coffee, replied, "It's a classic tactic. Discredit the messengers to invalidate the message." Rachel entered the room, her eyes red from a sleepless night. "My parents called. They've been getting threats. Someone threw a brick through their window last night." Dwayne stood up, his protective instincts kicking in. "We need to ensure their safety. This is escalating faster than we anticipated." Meanwhile, the team convened to assess the situation. Lena Shadow Kim had been monitoring online chatter and local communications. The town's social media is ablaze with mixed reactions. Some support us, but many are buying into the narrative that we're outsiders trying to destroy their community. Marcus Tank Thompson added, "There's talk of a counter-protest. They're planning to rally in support of the police department." Q, ever the strategist, leaned over the table, pointing to a map of Riverbrook. "We need to stay ahead. Let's organize a town hall meeting, present our evidence, answer questions, and show them the truth." Ava nodded. "Agreed. Transparency is our strongest weapon." The team sprang into action, coordinating with local allies to secure a venue and spread the word. Flyers were distributed, social media posts were made, and personal invitations were extended to community leaders. On the night of the town hall, the auditorium was packed. Residents filled the seats, their faces a mix of curiosity, skepticism, and concern. Dwayne took the stage, his presence commanding attention. He began, "I served this country for over 2 decades, believing in justice, integrity, and the protection of the innocent. What I encountered here in Riverbrook was a betrayal of those values." Ava followed, presenting the evidence they had gathered, financial records, testimonies, and video footage. The room was silent, the weight of the revelations settling over the audience. Rachel stepped forward, her voice steady. "I was born and raised here. This town is my home, but we can't ignore the truth. We must hold those in power accountable." As the presentation concluded, murmurs spread through the crowd. Some nodded in agreement, while others remained skeptical. A man stood up, his voice loud and accusatory. "How do we know you're not fabricating this, trying to make a name for yourselves at our expense?" Before Ava could respond, an elderly woman interjected, "I've lived here all my life. I know corruption when I see it. These people are risking everything to expose it. We should be thanking them." The room erupted into a mix of applause and dissent. The divide was evident, but so was the impact of their message. After the meeting, as the team gathered their materials, a young man approached Dwayne. "My brother was arrested last year under suspicious circumstances. I always felt something was off. Thank you for shedding light on this." Dwayne placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We're here to help. You're not alone." Back at their headquarters, the team debriefed. Q summarized, "We've made a dent, but the battle is far from over. We need to continue building alliances and gathering support." Ava added, "Change doesn't happen overnight, but tonight was a step in the right direction." Dwayne looked around at his team, pride evident in his eyes. We've started a movement, now we see it through. The morning after the town hall meeting, Riverbrook was abuzz with conversations. The local newspaper's front page bore a headline that read, "Outsiders stir trouble. Riverbrook's reputation at stake." Beneath it, a photo of Dwayne Johnson, Ava Washington, and Rachel Miller was prominently displayed, casting them as agitators rather than heroes. Dwayne sat at the kitchen table of their makeshift headquarters, the newspaper clenched in his hands. "They're painting us as the villains," he muttered, the weight of the town's backlash evident in his voice. Ava, sipping her coffee, replied, "It's a classic tactic. Discredit the messengers to invalidate the message." Rachel entered the room, her eyes red from a sleepless night. "My parents called. They've been getting threats. Someone threw a brick through their window last night." Dwayne stood up, his protective instincts kicking in. "We need to ensure their safety. This is escalating faster than we anticipated." Meanwhile, the team convened to assess the situation. Lena Shadow Kim had been monitoring online chatter and local communications. The town's social media is ablaze with mixed reactions. Some support us, but many are buying into the narrative that we're outsiders trying to destroy their community. Marcus Tank Thompson added, "There's talk of a counter-protest. They're planning to rally in support of the police department." Q Ever the strategist leaned over the table, pointing to a map of Riverbrook. "We need to stay ahead. Let's organize a town hall meeting, present our evidence, answer questions, and show them the truth." Ava nodded. "Agreed. Transparency is our strongest weapon." The team sprang into action, coordinating with local allies to secure a venue and spread the word. Flyers were distributed, social media posts were made, and personal invitations were extended to community leaders. On the night of the town hall, the auditorium was packed. Residents filled the seats, their faces a mix of curiosity, skepticism, and concern. Dwayne took the stage, his presence commanding attention. He began, "I served this country for over 2 decades, believing in justice, integrity, and the protection of the innocent. What I encountered here in Riverbrook was a betrayal of those values." Ava followed, presenting the evidence they had gathered, financial records, testimonies, and video footage. The room was silent, the weight of the revelation settling over the audience. Rachel stepped forward, her voice steady. "I was born and raised here. This town is my home. But we can't ignore the truth. We must hold those in power accountable." As the presentation concluded, murmurs spread through the crowd. Some nodded in agreement while others remained skeptical. A man stood up, his voice loud and accusatory. "How do we know you're not fabricating this, trying to make a name for yourselves at our expense?" Before Ava could respond, an elderly woman interjected, "I've lived here all my life. I know corruption when I see it. These people are risking everything to expose it. We should be thanking them." The room erupted into a mix of applause and dissent. The divide was evident, but so was the impact of their message. After the meeting, as the team gathered their materials, a young man approached Dwayne. "My brother was arrested last year under suspicious circumstances. I always felt something was off. Thank you for shedding light on this." Dwayne placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We're here to help. You're not alone." Back at their headquarters, the team debriefed. Q summarized, "We've made a dent, but the battle is far from over. We need to continue building alliances and gathering support." Ava added, "Change doesn't happen overnight, but tonight was a step in the right direction." Dwayne looked around at his team, pride evident in his eyes. "We've started a movement. Now, we see it through. They thought he was just another forgotten soul. They thought silence could bury the truth, but they were wrong. One voice sparked a movement. One story lit a fire across the nation. And thanks to people like you, watching, sharing, caring, the world is finally listening. If this story moved you, if it made you angry, made you hope, made you feel, don't scroll past. Hit that like button to honor those who've been silenced. Share this video so the world never forgets what happened in Riverbrook. And subscribe to this channel for more stories that demand to be heard. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were there that night? Because when ordinary people speak up, extraordinary change begins.